Awesome. And then I'll go ahead and admit people. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
We are going to just wait a couple more minutes to give anybody a chance to join. Nice seeing some familiar faces.
I was going to say I don't know anybody here, or at least I don't think I know anybody here.
We'll give it about another minute to see if anybody else joins.
Right.
Perfect. Well, hello, everybody. It's nice to see some familiar faces. If you are joining us again, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. We hope you enjoy it. We're going to go ahead and let Candi get started. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. We'll make sure to at least try to get to everybody's questions as time allows. So I'm going to go ahead and pin you, and you can take it away, Candi.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and lovely to see some faces that I do recognize here. Okay, I was muted.
Yes.
That helps. All right.
Sorry.
That's okay. So my name is Candi. Lovely to see all of you here, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and how I got here in front of you. So I used to be a nanny. I was a nanny for 30 years. I retired in September of 2021. And after that, I worked with a boutique nanny agency. Actually, it was a recruitment agency that covered all private service, but I was in charge of the nanny section. And that was a great experience. I enjoyed it a lot, but I realized it wasn't what I really wanted to do, where my heart was. So I left them in June of last year, and I started the Experienced Nanny and also a nanny job board called Private Staffing, which you may have seen around. So my experiences are I trained as a nanny in England. That course took 2 years, and it was 2 very intense years. There were 40 of us when we started and only 8 of us when we finished. It covers everything from basically child development to working with parents who are new parents. It was long and intense, but it was lovely. That course no longer exists now, so it's very unfortunate. But my first job was, so I trained in England. I'm half Italian, half English. I moved to Belgium right after training, and my first job was with a princess and a lord. And then after, I see Jane's face. And after that, I worked with a very high net worth family in Italy. After that, I worked for a high net worth family in Houston. Then I moved to London and worked for barristers. And then I went back to Houston worked for some high net worth families in Houston. Then I moved to Vienna for a high profile, high net worth client. And then when I was in Vienna, Austria, I got headhunted for a position in California. And after much debate, I decided to interview for the position in California. It was for a very high profile, very high net worth family. I was with them. And then my last position was with an ultra high net worth client. So I've seen the various the various phases of the high net worth, high profile, and ultra high net worth. And it's basically been my bread and butter from when I started. And so that is my wheelhouse. That's what I'm used to. I've seen the nanny side, obviously, but I've also seen the client side. And now I work with high net worth and ultra high net worth clients, and I do consulting with them. So if, for example, they've hired a nanny and maybe the nanny needs training, then I go in and do the training. Or maybe they have multiple nannies and the nannies are not getting along, or the schedules aren't working out, then I step in and help with that. So I wanted to start off with a few definitions because I'm sure you all know them, but just to go over what they are, because I learned a new one just a couple of days ago, which I thought was really interesting. So high profile is somebody who is in the media a lot. Everybody knows who they are, but it doesn't necessarily mean they have a lot of money. High net worth is somebody who has at least $1 million of liquid assets in the bank account, which means at any point in time, they have that $1 million and they can do whatever they want with it. And then ultra high net worth is somebody who has at least $30 million of liquid assets in their bank account. So there's a big jump between high net worth and ultra high net worth. Now, in my research, I've discovered that they're trying to up the amount of money that one needs to have as liquid assets for high net worth, up to 3 million or possibly 5 million. But I learned a new abbreviation or maybe acronym the last few days, and it's Henry, which is interesting. So it's high earning, not what was it? High earning, not rich yet. And these are individuals who are making between 250,000 and 500,000 a year. And they have the potential to become high net worth, but they have a lot of expenses at the moment. So maybe they're just starting their career and they're moving up to being high net worth. So any questions about that so far?
No questions. I just wanted to make a comment. So interesting. Oh my goodness. Never ending. All your learning is never ending, it seems.
Yes, you just learn and learn and learn. So I wanted to touch on a few things that you might, Henry, Alison. Henry is high earning, not rich yet. Okay, and so I wanted to touch on a few things that you might encounter if you're working with high net worth, ultra high net worth, or high profile families, and also for the nanny side as well, because it's a completely different setup and it's a completely different arena to what you probably used to. And please jump in if you have anything to add to this, but I've made a couple of lists. From the client side, the things that you'll notice are there are many more layers to the hiring process. So it won't necessarily be the client who picks up the phone to chat with you about their search. It will be somebody who works for them. So either the estate manager, an executive assistant, a chief of staff, a house manager, somebody else will be in charge of the recruitment. And this can work in your favor, but it can also work against you. Because there are so many layers, the person that you are trying to place is going to go through a series of interviews. And so this process will take time. Keep in mind that the principals might think they know what they are looking for in a nanny, but they may not be able to communicate that effectively to the person in charge of the recruitment. So that person is going to have a different idea to the principals on who they're looking for to fill this position. So you might get a job description that the estate manager has written that they think is what the principal want, and it's not necessarily what the principal wants. So you need to start this with a lot of patience because there will be many iterations of the job description and of the requirements that the principals actually have. So that would be, I think, the first starting point when you're working with these kind of clients. Then learn to assess how the clients want to be treated. So if you are working directly with the principals, don't be scared about the fact that they may be high profile or high net worth or ultra high net worth, or that they are potentially throwing a lot of money at these nannies. So they are people just like us. It's up to us to understand how they want to be treated. Some of them don't really want to be put on a pedestal. They don't want you to be all, ooh, this is an actor, so I'm I'm going to go all crazy about them. I can share a story with you. In one of my positions, there were always many A-list actors around, and the family I worked with had multiple residences and multiple yachts, and on each of these yachts or residences there was a fully staffed set of people. So a yacht would have 60 crew members, and when the guests came onto the yachts, some of them were just so down to earth that you wouldn't know they were a celebrity, and then others used to get really really shy about the fact that the crew was kind of fawning all over them, and they would come and hide in my cabin and my charge's cabin. So just keep in mind that people like us, they want to be treated just like normal people most of the time. There will be the occasional person who is high strung and who wants to be treated like a celebrity, but I would say the most people I've met have been very reasonable. Now, I will say that in California, where I'm based, you're going to find people who are slightly different in their perception of wealth to other parts of the world and other parts of the country. So I think because in California, especially Northern California, it's new money, then they are used to certain things. And if you were to work in Europe and you worked for Princess and a Lord, or two princes or two princesses or whatever, the expectations would be different on the way that you actually interact with them. But figuring out how to do it is your first step. If you see that they want to be very formal, then follow that procedure.
And we have a couple of questions, Candi. Emily, do you want to read yours?
Yes, I'm driving. Please read it.
Okay. First question, when working with a representative of the family, what is the process for getting clarity on the principal's wants or needs in a role? How and when do you involve them without risking the relationship with the rep?
Okay, so my advice here would be that you would work with the rep and you wouldn't get the principals involved unless you had maybe presented multiple candidates and the candidates were perfectly fine, but they weren't passing the step with the rep, or they were passing that step and then the principals were saying there was something terribly wrong with them. And in that case, I would ask to speak with the principals just to get their sense of things, because as I said, sometimes things get lost in translation, and you want to make sure that you are sending the candidates that the principal wants, not the candidates that the representative wants. And I think the best way to do it is to just basically say to the person you're working with that you would like to get the principal's insights, because obviously the candidates that you have sent were good candidates, but you want to get a real sense of what is going on in the household. And the best way to do that is with the principals. You're not always going to get the principals, even if you ask, just because some of them are just too busy. They are just not going to give you the time of day. But I would say work with the representative until there's a really big issue that you can't solve with them.
Perfect. And we have another follow-up question, almost similar. When working with a governance or executive assistant, when do you circle the principals back in for a replacement search? Let's say their first search is a flop. In general, what aspects of search would you suggest encouraging the principal to be involved in?
Again, it depends. It depends on the principals as well. Some principals do want to get involved, and they want to get involved right at the start. And I would say the majority of our principals don't want to get involved. They want somebody else to do it. If you have placed somebody and it was a flop and you're working on a replacement, my suggestion would be that you get feedback from whoever you're working with, the executive assistant, the governess, on why it flopped. And then I would also ask them to go to the principals and ask the principals for their feedback. Make sure the two match. If they don't, then I would have a conversation with whoever you're working with and ask if you could speak with the principals as well. I can tell you that as a nanny, some principals don't even know who their nannies are. So just because you're working with a governess doesn't mean that they are not going to give you as much information as the principals. I worked with one client who had multiple nannies. They had no idea who was on the nanny team. They didn't even know the names of the nannies. They knew the head nannies' names, and that was it. And if they had to communicate anything to the nanny team, it would be via the head nannies. So speaking with the principals isn't always the answer to the questions.
Thank you, Candy. And a couple more. Jacqueline, did you want to read your question?
No, because I'm in an environment with noise, so if you could do it, please.
No problem. How does the family manager vet an agency, and what are they generally looking for in an agency?
I would say the majority of the hiring managers are going to reach out to agencies that they know and agencies that they've had recommendations for. So they don't necessarily vet them. I would say the majority of estate managers, house managers, family managers, chiefs of staff that I know, it's all word of mouth. So it's important if you find one high net worth client that goes really, really well, because then they will keep on passing on the word.
Can I ask a follow-up question in reference
Of course.
to that? So if you're new in that realm of the industry, how would you suggest that you get your first family?
I'm not an agency owner, so I don't have the actual answer to that question, but my suggestion would be that you network with estate managers, chiefs of staff in your area or in the area that you want to be in the market in. So if you were to be, let's say, in LA, you need to actually get yourself out there and start networking with family offices and with agency, estate managers and chiefs of staff.
Thank you, Candy. We have a few more questions. They are loving you. Ashley wants to know, how do you handle pay negotiations when working with an assistant or someone other than the principal? I can see how sharing salary information with a potential coworker can be an issue.
Okay, so it depends on how these clients are set up. So some clients will have let's say the assistant or the chief of staff do the initial interview, and then they will have somebody else who doesn't work within the home do the salary negotiations. So for example, in 3 of my last positions, I did all the different interviews. I went through all the steps. Money was never discussed. And then I received a call from their attorneys, and the attorneys made the offers. And then the offer and the negotiations were basically done between the nanny, the agency, and the attorney. So the principals and other people who were within the home never really knew what the salary was. Other families will actually have somebody on their team who is actually responsible for all the HR in the home. So it's usually the estate manager or the chief of staff. That person will know your salary anyways, because they will be doing the payroll. So usually it works that way. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. And one more here. How do you get in front of the principal or family manager to start working with HNW or UNW clients?
Again, I think networking here is really, really important, because a lot of it is via word of mouth. So for example, while I was working as a nanny, I would have my principal's friends, chiefs of staff, or estate managers ask me, which agency placed you? And I would say which agency placed me, and then they would say, could you do an introduction, because we're also looking. So it's a lot of it is word of mouth. So network. If you can get out there and be at events where there will be chiefs of staff, estate managers, family offices, get out there and be part of that. The more people see you, the more people will come to you. Any more questions? No?
Oh, we just got one more. How do you navigate a search when the principals constantly change what they're looking for? Job description, schedules, role, responsibilities, etc. And at what point do you put up boundaries for their search versus being flexible?
That's a good question. So I would say my personal view as somebody who's worked in the homes is to always start putting your boundaries up, or at least testing the boundaries from the first interaction that you have with the families, even if it's their representatives. So when I went to interviews, I would specifically ask questions that were related to my personal boundaries, and I would see what the responses were. You can have boundaries and be flexible, but you need to know, 1, you need to know where your boundaries are. 2, you need to know how to communicate them. So if a principal is giving you a job description or sharing information about what they're looking for, then you go through the job description with them, they agree to it, and then you interview candidates, present candidates, and all of a sudden the principals are saying, oh, well, now I want to add that the nanny is going to be responsible for washing the cars every week or whatever. And that was not in the job description. I would say bring it up right there and then, and say to them, okay, we did the search based on the job description that you shared with us. If there's anything else we need to know now. And if they say yes, then go through those responsibilities. If they're not responsibilities that you think should fall on a nanny, then have the conversations with them and go based on that. If they keep on changing it, you need to know when it's time for you to put your foot down. I would say you need to start putting it down right from the beginning. yes, they might get irritated with you, but at the same time, they will also respect you for putting the boundaries down and for setting your foot down, because most of them are not used to people saying no to them. And most of them are not used to people saying, this is not acceptable, because most high profile, high net worth and ultra high net worth clients want you to come up with a solution when there is a problem. So as long as you can explain the reason why you're putting your foot down, you should be okay.
And Candi, can you share with us, please, a little bit more about the candidate side of HNW placements and what's unique about that?
All right, so that's a completely different beast, in the sense that a lot of nannies at the moment are looking for these kind of roles, but don't necessarily have the skills to work in these homes and don't necessarily have the experience to work in these homes. The one thing that I do see over and over again, and it's something that I really can't swallow, is the drama and the entitlement that come with the nannies, not all of them, but with a majority of the nannies that are actually applying for these positions. When I was working as a recruiter, I used to speak to nannies all day long. And the thing that used to get me really going was you would call them up, you would talk to them about a position that you had, and the answer would be, do they have a private jet? Do they have a yacht? Because if not, I don't want to apply. And I'm like, okay, you're obviously not serious about your position. That should not be your first question. Your first question should be related to children. You're a nanny. And maybe I'm old school, but that to me, it just, I just can't tolerate it. And if that is your attitude, then you're not going to survive in this arena, because principals don't want somebody who's entitled. They want somebody who can come in, do their job, no drama, and go home or stay, or whatever the situation is. So I would say watch out for drama, watch out for entitlement. There's always going to be drama in fully staffed homes because there are a lot of people involved in the care of the principals and the families. So the drama, you're going to have to tone it down a little bit, but there is a lot of entitlement. And then the other thing that I really feel is important to know is that what works with Henrys doesn't necessarily mean it works with high net worth and ultra high net worth for nannies. So high net worth and ultra high net worth, they are looking for somebody who is going to be flexible, and the pay is higher because they expect you to deal with whatever's thrown at you with grace. So you need to be able to do anything that is thrown at you with a smile on your face. You need to be able to come in and do the job. You need to be the expert in the job. They don't want to train you. They want it to be a smooth transition from one nanny to another. So when I say things that you do with normal families don't work with ultra high net worth, for example, I see a lot of nannies saying, when I travel, I charge an overnight fee. That's fine if you're working with somebody who travels maybe once a year. But when you have families who travel every single day, they don't want to sit and fuss with overnight fees. So if you're placing a nanny candidate in one of those positions, make sure that that fee is included in their annual salary, which then needs to be hourly, but usually it's a salary. Make sure that all of that is incorporated into their salary, because otherwise that will become a drama, because they're not getting an overnight fee and the expectation is that they're getting an overnight fee. That's just one example. So I would say watch out for the drama, watch out for the entitlement, and make sure that the nannies that you're placing are aware of all the things that could be different working with high net worth and high profile clients, and make sure that they are clear about what it is they want. I see a lot of nannies reading job descriptions. They see the 6 figures. That's all they see. They apply for the position. They don't understand the implications of that 6 figures. They don't understand the flexibility required, the adaptability. Maybe you're gone from home for 12 weeks at a time. You are only supposed to work 5 days a week. Now you're working 12 weeks, and why? And all of these things are going to happen. And so if you are applying for these positions, you need to be aware of them. You also need to be very thick-skinned.
Perfect. Thank you. We have a couple more questions. What questions can you ask to sniff out the drama candidates?
Okay, so I would ask questions related to their previous positions, and to give you examples, for example, of something that happened that they and how they dealt with it. I would ask questions related to previous positions and also see if a name drop. I would ask about previous positions. Specifically, I mean, it really depends on the position, but I would say how they related to other members of the team, which situations they enjoyed being in, how they dealt with, let's say, another member of a team if they were on a team when there was a particular issue. And you will hear from their responses if there was drama or not. That's the way I would go. I also feel that speaking to candidates multiple times and then getting comfortable allows them to share a lot more than actually just asking interview questions. So if you are interested in a candidate, my suggestion would be that you actually, if you can meet them for coffee, great. If not, have multiple chats with them and see how they respond to different questions that you pose.
Perfect. And can we talk about nanny hiring preferences between old money and new money? Is one group more likely to consider alternative experience candidates or those with non-traditional childcare experience?
I don't really know the answer to that question. I think new money is certainly more flexible. I think they don't really particularly mind if the nanny is traditionally trained or if they have a lot of childcare experience, but I do think the older money follow more of a traditional hiring. So they're looking for people who are trained, people who have a lot of experience. So they're going for a different kind of candidate. I would say also, I'm assuming most of you are in the US, but in Europe, the hiring process is very different. So it really depends on where these people are from. I would say old money in Europe is going to look for a very traditional kind of nanny, most likely a Norland nanny or somebody similar to them. And so if you were working, let's say, with a European old money who had moved to the US, you would be looking at that kind of nanny, which is almost impossible to have a Norland nanny in the US. Although Norland has opened to US candidates, so that is going to make it a lot easier. I don't know, from what I've seen here, a lot of the families in the US are definitely more open to younger and inexperienced candidates.
Thank you. And what items are critical to be included in a candidate's confidentiality agreement?
Everything. So confidentiality agreement for the between the family and the nanny, or between the agency and the nanny?
Family.
Okay, so usually those come from attorneys. And so the family will decide what they want and how long they want that confidentiality agreement to be valid for. In my previous NDAs, which I've had for every single position that I've been on, some of them lasted a lifetime. Some of them only lasted for 3 years after my employment. So it's important for the nannies to actually read those very carefully. Usually the higher the worth, the higher the things that, the more the things that are put in there. But I would say families who are high profile, high net worth and ultra high net worth are all going to have that their personal information isn't shared, that their children's information isn't shared, that you are going to maintain confidentiality at all times with all members of a team and with anybody outside of the family. So, for example, some of my confidentiality agreements didn't allow me to discuss anything about the children with any other team member, other than, for example, if I was taking the children to an activity and I needed the driver to drive me, yes, I could share that. But I couldn't say, for example, little Johnny choked today and we had to do the Heimlich maneuver. I could not say that to anybody on the team. The expectation is that you are not going to speak about them at all. I've always referred to my charges as numbers, so I would call 1, 2, 3 if I was in public. Obviously not the children, but if I was explaining to somebody what my job entailed and I said I was a nanny and they said, you know, can you talk about the children? I would say no. And if I had to refer to the children, even with other team members, I would call them either by a number or by the name chosen by the security team on the in the family I worked with. But going back to your question, what should be in the confidentiality agreement? I think everything, every single aspect of the family's life. If you hear anything, that is covered. If, let's say, the principal is on the phone and is having a conversation about something important, you're not to repeat that. So just everything that you are privy to. But like I said, most of those come from attorneys, so they're pretty solid.
And Candi, can we go back to when you were speaking about the Norland nannies, and can you explain what that looks like?
So a Norland nanny is basically the top tier nanny in the world. So, for example, William and Kate have a Norland nanny. They are trained. They do a 3-year nanny training course, and then they have to do a 1-year placement before they can actually graduate. It's been going for 100 years, I think. They were only open to UK residents. They've now opened it to international students, so that would be a fabulous way to get really good nannies on the US market. They wear that brown uniform. I'm sure people have seen them, the brown, not very nice looking uniform. And usually they work with royalty, they work with celebrities, they work with movie stars. But again, because of the different visa regulations in the different countries, it has been very difficult to get Norland trained nannies outside of the UK. And I will be interviewing the principal of Norland Nanny on my YouTube channel if anybody wants to follow it. I'm not sure when yet, but it will be happening.
That sounds very cool.
I think it is very cool, but there you go. Any other questions? No? Okay, so I would say when you're working with high profile, high net worth clients, make sure that you are ready and comfortable to have difficult conversations with them, because they will happen. You need to advocate for the nannies. Ultimately, your responsibility is towards the client. They're the ones who are paying you, but you don't want to place somebody and then they are not, they're not going to last there, and you have to find a replacement. So make sure that you're comfortable having those conversations, and make sure that you are comfortable knowing that in all of these positions, as lovely as some of the clients are, there are going to be some weird expectations on the nanny, and most likely on you as well, who's recruiting them. And when I say that, I mean things like, for example, I've had positions where the parents said, you are not allowed to hug my child, which is fine, it's their child, but it's really hard to be a nanny and not hug a child, especially when you're going to spend 24 hours a day with that child, and your bond is going to be very, very strong in a very, very short period of time. Or I've had clients say, this is the schedule, I need you to follow it to a T. And on the schedule, they put things like, at 10:10 in the morning, you need to blow my child's nose. Well, I'm not going to blow your child's nose if I don't need it. So at 10:10, I might not be doing that. And so those conversations need to happen. I would normally say it's the nanny's responsibility to have those conversations if they're already in the position, but you will find that a lot of nannies don't want to have those conversations, and they might call you up and ask you to be part of that conversation. So you need to know how far you want to be involved in all of this. If you've already placed them, if you are in the process of placing them and they're already asking weird stuff, then you definitely need to have those conversations, because it's your responsibility at that point, I would say. And then I wanted to touch on childcare philosophies a little bit, because I know that clients who are in the high net worth, ultra high net worth will say, our childcare philosophy is X. For example, here in Northern California, I see a lot of clients say our childcare philosophy is Y or Montessori, which is great, because then you can put it in the job description and then you're searching for that particular childcare philosophy. But the problem is that they don't know what their childcare philosophy is. Somebody said Rye to them, and so now all of a sudden we're Rye. Somebody said Montessori, so now all of a sudden we're Montessori. So just be very careful when they do throw these philosophies out, what those mean to them. Now, it's hard to have these conversations if you're not speaking with a principal directly, because the estate manager is not going to know. They're just regurgitating what's been said to them. But if you do have the opportunity to speak with the principals, make sure you drill down on those aspects, because you don't want to say, okay, it's a Rye nanny, so you look for the needle in the haystack of a Rye nanny, you find a Rye nanny, then they get there and the family does nothing related to Rye, because now you're going to annoy the nanny as well. So make sure that you try to get into the nitty-gritty of the requests that they're making.
And Jane has a question.
Yes.
Jane, would you like to ask your question?
Sure, happy to. So awesome information so far.
Thank you.
How can our nannies, if they're working full-time and based in the US, elevate themselves? So let's say we have a nanny who's looking to, become that high net worth family's nanny, and is okay with all of the parameters, being available 24/7, all that stuff, but she just doesn't know how to elevate herself. Are there any programs you would recommend at all for them?
So I'm going to just say, I just created a course for nannies who want to work with high net worth and high profile. It's called the Nanny MBA, and it's on my website.
I love it, by the way. This is Megan. I just commented. Hi, guys. Great course. Really well done. It has an app. So definitely refer them to that, Jane. Love it, Candi.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I mean, there are lots of courses out there for nannies, but they aren't exclusively for nannies who want to elevate to working for high net worth and high profile or ultra high net worth. There is a coaching for, it's mostly for newborn care specialists and potentially could be for nannies as well. That's run by two newborn care specialists, Annie and Stephanie. And I'd be very happy to share that information with you as well if you want to share it with your nannies.
Sure. Thank you. And I appreciate Megan and Candi, because as with everything, there's other programs, other things out there, but the best of the best is what, I would love to connect people with. So thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So what was I going to say? Travel. I think that's important. It's an important topic to discuss when you're talking with high profile, high net worth and ultra high net worth clients. Typically, these families travel extensively. Now, some of them won't take their children with them, but the majority will take the children. And that has an effect on the nanny and the amount of time the nanny is going to be away from home. I would suggest that if a nanny is going to have a very high travel ratio in their life, that the actual hourly rate or salary goes up, because traveling does wear you out. And even if you're traveling in style, on the private jet or whatever, it still takes a lot out of you. And if you have a family or you have a pet, you're leaving those people behind, and it does take a toll on you. And then the next topic I wanted to talk about is the 4 things that I think high net worth and ultra high net worth and high profile families are looking for mostly are going to be longevity. So if you have nannies who don't have longevity, that is going to be a hurdle. These families want people who are going to come and stay and put up with whatever needs to be put up with and not move on 6 months down the line. They want somebody who has 100% flexibility. They don't want to hear excuse me, my dog needs to go to the vet, so I need to go home. They don't want to hear my child is sick, so I can't come in. Excuse me. They want 100% flexibility. They want loyalty to them, to the children, and for what they stand for, and they want safety and security. So those, I would say, are the 4 things that I see and hear all the time. I want somebody who's going to stay, somebody who can come in and just do the job. I don't need to train them. Somebody who's loyal, somebody who's flexible, and somebody who will keep my children safe. The one thing I would say on the nanny side is that nannies who work with these kind of families will often find that the detachment between the parents and the children is quite evident. And so it's something that they need to be able to cope with in different ways. They can't replace the parents because they're not the parents. And it's also not a healthy way of dealing with it. But they need to fill the gap between the parents and the children. So it's a very, very difficult place to find yourself in, because in theory, it could be considered child abuse because the parents are really not caring for the children. But obviously you can't go and report somebody for child abuse or child neglect just because you're not spending time with them. So that is a topic that nannies do need to be aware of and need to be able to know how to cope with, because it is very, very sad. Jane, you
just ask a quick question on that. So obviously, if you or another nanny are super close with the children and the children are young enough. I know for me, a long, long time ago, right, I had some issues with a young girl calling me mommy because she was so little and mom went to work and she had been home and now I was mommy. And I'm like, no, 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 please don't say that. Do you have any, on the theme of you're kind of replacing a parent? Um, do you have any, I don't even know. I guess this is more of a nanny question than an agency question, but sometimes the nanny will come to me and say, "Oh gosh, this is happening. How can me as an agency owner have that conversation with them?" And I know Megan's going to say you're going to give them the tools to figure it out, but um, I went down a windy road, so I apologize. Any thoughts on any of that, like the nanny being more close than the family is comfortable with the nanny being?
Yeah. So it's going to happen just because of the nature of the setup. So it will happen. But in these kind of positions, you don't want one of the parents to be jealous because they will just fire you. And then if they fire you, the child has lost the person that they, that they were close to, and now they have to start all over again. So I would definitely, my recommendation as a nanny is to always make sure that you have open communication with the principals if possible, and with the parents in general, because it happens even when they're not high net worth. And just say, this is what's happening and how would you like me to handle it? Because that is the best way. If the parent chooses to fire you, the parent chooses to fire you most of the time because you're the one bringing it up and you're trying to come up with solutions and you're involving them in the process. They won't. I would say there's a higher chance of you being fired in a high net worth, ultra high net worth situation because they don't want that relationship to be there. One of the positions I had, the child didn't even know who their parents were. I mean, not a clue. And so I worked really hard, but I involved the parents, obviously. I just said, look, I'm noticing this. I think we can fix it. This is the plan I have. And we did it. Great. I'm not saying they had a wonderful relationship, but they had a relationship. And I was always very, very clear about, these are mom and dad. These are your parents. These are actually your older siblings that you didn't know you had. And so we would have pictures on the wall. That's mom, that's dad, etc., etc. Every night we would say goodnight, although the parents weren't there. I made sure the parents would call every day at the same time so the child could actually see the parents on FaceTime. And so those parents were comfortable knowing I wasn't there to replace them, right? Because I wasn't. That's not my job. My job is to be a nanny, not to be a parent. But I would say they need to have open conversations.
And we have another question, Candi. How long would you suggest a trial period be for these types of families so that the nanny can get a true feel for the dynamic? Would you suggest a trial period at all?
That's a very good question because I personally don't believe in trials. I think trials are a show. The family is showing you how good they are, and the nanny is showing the family how good they are, and everything is perfect, and it's highly unlikely that you're going to see something untoward. It's going to be a couple of days or maybe a week. Everybody's going to manage through it, and then you say yes, and then the whole thing is completely different. So in my experience, it's much more helpful to say, if they're offering you the position, to say there's going to be a 90-day probationary period on both sides, just like in any other position that you would have in an office. You don't go for a trial, you're either hired or you're not, and then you have a probationary period. During that time, anyone, or however your replacement policy is during that time, people can really see what's going on in a household, and families can really see what a nanny can and cannot do. And then after those 90 days, it's official, you're hired, or it's official, you're not hired. It makes much more sense to do that than to have a fake trial. And I know that's probably not what everybody loves to hear, but that's my view. I have never done a trial in my entire life.
So it sounds like the communication needs to be very clear from the very beginning.
Yeah. So that's my view on trials.
Candi, it's Megan.
Yeah.
I feel the exact same way. There is no other career where you trial for a period of time. You can have a probationary period, but not trial. And I think that parents are expecting this nanny to come in and perform at a certain level that they can't do in 2 or 3 days. They're spending that time just figuring out the lay of the land, where the garbage bins are,
Exactly.
right? So the probationary period is something that we've had a lot of success with, and it lets the family feel better. It's part of the replacement anyway. It's just giving them that reassurance and that candidate still being able to plug in. You are just so brilliant. I want to make sure that we have time for one more last round of questions. So if you guys can please put those in the chat box. Miss M, thank you so much for managing this so beautifully. Candi, I think we could literally just keep you here for days. You have so many wonderful, wonderful tips to share, guys. She is the real deal. And I have been so honored to know her in so many different ways. And thank you so much, Candi. So last questions before our time is up. And
all right, let's go for those questions. Thank you, Megan.
Looks like we have one more in the box. Chantel, would you like me to read that? Oh. What are your top 3 agencies you would recommend for these types of positions that represent both the client and nannies well?
Okay, so I can tell you the ones that I have personally worked with, so I know they're going to do a good job. Some of them are in Europe, some of them are in the States. So I have worked with Kensington Nannies, which is in London, not the Kensington Nannies in the States. I know there is one, but I've never worked with them. They were lovely. They placed me. They kept in touch with me. I mean, I'm not one to pick up the phone and complain about anything really. So I'm relatively easy. But they kept in touch and followed me throughout. Here in the States, I was placed by Domestic Match. They also do a very good job. They keep in touch with candidates regularly, the ones that they place. And they were very good at helping negotiate my salary. They were also very honest about the position and the difficulties that were entailing entailed that position. So I appreciated the openness. And then one more, you asked for 3. Okay, so one more, I would say I worked with Regency Nannies, again in the UK. Very professional, very open. I found myself in a situation where one of my previous employers wasn't happy that I left, and they basically complained that I was leaving and made a big deal out of it. And Regency Nannies was an agency that actually called my previous employer that was making all this fuss about nothing and asked them some very specific questions and realized that what they were saying wasn't true and basically helped me out. So those would be my top 3. Any other questions I can answer?
Looks like everybody is just thanking you, Candi.
You're welcome.
Chantel said that was very helpful, having them support you as a nanny. It's not always easy to find.
Yeah, I think the support is great, even if it's just, a chat or a quick email, just to say, we're still here. We still want to make sure that you're okay. That counts for a lot.
For sure. Well, we appreciate you, Candi, for sharing all of your information with us.
You're very welcome. It was lovely to be here.
Allison shared the link to Candi's YouTube in the chat, guys, if you didn't
Thank
catch
you.
that.
Thank
So
you.
the link is also there. And again, she did create a course, the Nanny NBA, if you guys want to check that out. Will the recording be available? Depending on if you are, I believe Megan makes them available to members of the community. So if you are a part of that,
It'll be emailed out for anyone that RSVP'd as well. You'll receive that recording if you RSVP'd. If you're a member of Arise, it'll be loaded into Podia probably tomorrow. I'm obviously in between areas right now. So yes, the recording will be available. We're so glad that you were able to pop in. And Candi, I will make sure to link the Nanny MBA in there as well as your YouTube page.
Thank you. Thank you. And if anybody has questions that I haven't answered and, you know, wants to ask the question, you're more than welcome to let me know.
Thank you so much, Candi, and thank you everybody for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for all the questions. It was really great.
And it's almost Thanksgiving. I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Candi,
Yes.
will you be home in the States for that?
I will be in the States, yes. I'll
Good.
be moving my office from upstairs to downstairs.
Sounds like a big move.
Yeah,
Fun move.
huge.
Well, thank you again. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week and holiday week next week. And I look forward to connecting again soon.
Thank you. You take care. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
all. Bye-bye.
Bye.